You are listening to Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.
Hey there, welcome back to the Digging In Podcast presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors. I'm your host, Kinch Kelly, helping you get those questions answered to and through retirement. Today, joined by one of the most elite financial advisors in the country who happens to be part of the Rooted Wealth Advisors family, Joe Mateja.
What an intro, Kinch. Man, if I'm not blushing.
I mean, it's just when you walk through the door, it just comes so natural. How do I not give you, give you the major props? You've earned them all.
Well, I appreciate that, Kinch. I'm really excited to be here today.
I am. I'm ready to go. I feel a little bit nervous. I don't know. We're gonna flip the script a little bit today, and why don't you explain to everybody what we're doing today?
So today what we're going to do is we're going to, as Kinch mentioned, we're going to flip the script. So I'm going to be asking you similar questions, many of them actually the same exact questions that I would ask folks when they sit down with me for a first visit. It's, my opportunity to learn more about them. They get to learn about me too, but we're going to go ahead and learn a little bit about you today, Kinch.
It's just a peek inside of like the discovery visit, right? Mm-hmm. And so normally I'm the one asking the questions, not having to answer a lot of questions, which really puts me in the easy chair, right? And so, we get to flip it a little bit. I don't know about your wife, Sarah, but my wife, when she was expecting our first, read that book, the What to Expect When You're Expecting. Mm-hmm. I didn't read it because, it wasn't up my alley.
I think I read a chapter.
But this will be like the fun financial advisor version of that, like a peek inside of what the discovery visit is like when you sit down with Joe.
Yeah, so let's keep it high level, Kinch.
There you go.
We don't have to get too deep into the weeds.
I'm an open book.
But open book, huh?
Open book. Here we go.
So I guess first and foremost, Kinch, I already know you pretty well, and those are some of the questions that we would kind of open a conversation with. Just tell me about yourself. But fast forward. I think one of the first questions that I'm going to ask folks, why are we here? Why are we sitting down? What are you concerned about? As it relates to retirement. I know you're rather young at this point, Kinch, but I don't want to assume, have you thought about retirement? Do you know when you want to retire? Do you have a goal?
You know what? I don't have a date. I think we talked about that last time.
Yep.
I don't have an exact date, and I don't really know what retirement would look like for me because I feel like I always have to be doing something.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's work. I do have a lot of hobbies.
Okay.
So
tell me about that. Well, what makes you tick?
Whoa, lots of stuff. I always wanted to be Peter Pan as a kid, right?
Okay.
Like I never wanted to grow up.
Sure.
Not that I wanted to fly around and live on an island, although that does sound very cool.
Okay.
But I always wanted to just be a kid at heart. I felt like the fun people I knew as a kid that were adults at the time, they always did things to keep themselves young, right?
Okay.
And whether that was playing with their kids or their grandkids or participating in those activities. So I have some hobbies that carried over from my childhood that I now share with my 3 kids.
Okay.
Like building Legos. Like building Legos. A few years ago, I got into building guns. They were described to me as the adult version of Legos.
I can see that.
So that's been really fun. I've built probably close to, a dozen guns for friends and family, and it's been really fun.
Okay.
So I enjoy that. I'm a big sports nut. Having lived
I knew that.
in a past life and a history where I was in a locker room on a sideline a lot, like rubbing shoulders with some very big name athletes. I still love to follow teams. I grew up playing sports. I capped out pretty early being 5'8". I know my dreams of playing in the NBA were pretty dashed.
Don't sell yourself short. You're a tremendous slouch.
But I love attending like sporting events and going to
Okay.
football games, basketball games, stuff like that. So travel.
So do you see any of these things, maybe all of them, being part of your retirement vision?
Yeah, I think they have to be.
Okay. So, I would say, Kinch, that in my experience, an individual's vision of retirement tends to morph over time, right? So what you are envisioning now for, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that may change, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that being said, any of these, hobbies or desires, things that make you tick, have you started to plan for how you're going to, allow yourself the time to do these things, and then B, ultimately, the money to be able to do these things while still providing that same standard of living that you've grown accustomed to in your family, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting question, right? Because I enjoy Legos and guns, but I'm not building every day.
Right.
And I enjoy travel, but I don't think we'll be traveling every day. I think, I think my wife and I would love to travel and see our kids and hopefully one day our grandkids, and we have a big extended family. So it's something we definitely love to do. As far as time goes, I can't work for Rooted forever and still see all those people. So
you're right.
Maybe I won't be working as much as I anticipate. But as far as the money side, it's like we budget now, but it's like, what does that look like, especially with all the inflation stuff? Really, we've noticed a huge change just in the past 6 months at the grocery store. And so it's like, as the belt gets a little tighter, also just living in Illinois, utilities here are insanely
Yeah, they're
expensive.
pretty crazy. We both moved from different states.
Yeah.
Yeah, cost of living is different. There's a couple
Yeah.
of things there, Kinch, that you mentioned that I'll peel back the layers a little bit. The first is you said, time. Right? I don't know if I think I'll have time to do this. Maybe I won't. Will I have time to do this? I can't work here forever, right? So that's a really interesting point that a lot of people don't think about. And I would say this: retirement, when that time comes, every day is Saturday, right? Every day is Saturday. While we're working, we typically work Monday through Friday, right? When we're working, are we spending money? No, we're not. So when do we spend our money? That's after work or it's the weekends.
Right. So when every day is Saturday, you're talking about expenses really increasing, and you're probably going to spend more than you think, because while I don't build Legos or guns every day now,
you're going to have the time.
If every day is Saturday, I'm going to be bored, is what you're saying, and so I'm going to want to build more, and so thus it increases the spending.
Right. And that's just it. So, for you, if it's Legos and you're not budgeting for it now, maybe we should budget for that. Maybe we should plan on that.
Oh, yeah.
And, what is the $400, Star Wars,
The Death Star?
The Death Star.
Oh, you better believe it.
Right. So that's what it costs today. But what is that going to look like in 20 years? The $1,000 gun today, what is that going to look like in 20 years?
Right.
The travel, right? You said I'm not going to be traveling every day. Well, maybe not. But what if that includes an RV? Right. And I know we had those conversations, just today, actually.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe you're not traveling every day, but maybe there's a monthly bill, right, that we need to be planning for. So, these are some of the questions, Kinch, that I would be asking folks, right? I guess another question that I would ask is, what, now I know you mentioned you don't really have a date, right? But, let's pick one. Right, is what I would say, right? Because I have folks that come in that are closer to retirement than you and I are, but they still don't know, right? And one of the questions that they come in asking is, when can I retire?
Right.
So I would throw that back with tell me about your monthly spending now, right? And then tell me about what have you accomplished so far in life to save, right? And we don't have to get into specifics, Kinch, but, those are some of the questions that I would challenge you, whether you're 30 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, does somewhere in the middle, right? I would challenge you to think about that, so we can start putting a plan in place.
Right. And that's where budgeting comes in on a big note, right? It ties into both those points you made. So it's like, what are you spending today? Do you really know what you're spending?
Where does the money go?
Because I think, like, I've been guilty of it before. You just kind of tripping through life in like dripping nickels, right?
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, with so many subscription based services now, like, what are you paying for that you're not even using on a monthly basis? And can you turn it off? And would it affect your life? Or can you turn it back on with a free trial when you need it for, say, the College World Series? Right. Or
don't forget about that free trial.
Right, because it'll end.
Yeah.
It'll end.
And then it's
right?
a paid trial.
And then it's $65 a month,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Before you even know it. So
yes.
it's stuff like that. But I think like my wife and I have done a very decent job of budgeting, like, over time, right? We started back when we were in school with Dave Ramsey's system, right?
Sure.
And while it's not great for everybody, right? And it's a kind of a generic approach to everything. And the more I learn about financial services, like, the more I realize that it's very general. But it's a good place to start. Like, if you haven't done anything, it's a good place to start. There are some foundation principles in there that would help it work. But then you make a little more money, and then you get away from the budgeting, and then all of a sudden, maybe don't have an emergency fund and something happens, right? And so I think budgeting has been, like, a huge part of our life. And I think even now it's like, okay, we probably need to tighten up, right? Inflation's high. We're spending more at the grocery store than we've ever spent before. I mentioned, like, utilities, right? We just closed on our home and having to do that again. So it's like expenses coming out of the woodwork with different projects, and it's like, whoa, we really got to get a hold of this budget again because we need to prepare for life. So I feel like that's a really good thing if you haven't started knowing what your expenses are and then kind of trying to project out what they're going to be. I guess the question I would ask to you is, how do you project out what expenses are going to be when we're at a 40-year high of inflation?
Well, we're at a 40-year high of inflation. You're right, Kinch, and I like how you're flipping this back to me.
I'm trying my darndest.
For you. But I would say this, inflation, regardless of how high it is always there. It's ever present, right? It's always been there. The last 10 years, even with the rate of inflation that we're experiencing now currently in the short term, we're still at about 2.5%. Roughly over the last 10 years, which is relatively low when you compare it to the last century. The last roughly 108 years, we've averaged just a tick over 3% rate of inflation, about 3.25%, give or take. So, I would say, it can be difficult to project out, but really it's not. When you think about it, because history does often repeat itself, and we do know for a fact that inflation will ever be present. However high it is or low it is in the short term, it's going to be there. It's just a natural part of how economics works. So really, it's just taking a set amount of money today that we are spending to maintain our standard of living. Right? Whatever that is for you, for me, for any of our clients for that matter. And then just projecting out what is that going to increase every year, for the next 10, 20, 50, 80 years, right? We can do that. So although on the surface it may seem difficult, it's a lot easier than you think. And unfortunately,
that's why you're the pro.
Well, it's a lot. You know what? It's one of the things that I come across that most people don't even think about. They don't think about it, right? A lot of people will answer the question that I ask, which is, how much are you spending right now? What do you need to live? And a lot of the responses that I get are, this is what I need. I got no problem. I got Social Security. I've got this. I've got that. Whatever my income sources are for retirement, I'm going to be fine. And then I will often throw it back. Well, what does that look like 10 years from now? What does that look like 20 years from now, right? In our case, what does that look like 30 years?
5 years. I'm on a 5-year plan.
5-year plan. I did have a thought, though, from something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned Dave Ramsey. I don't care if it's Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, Tom Hegna, Joe Mateja, Kinch O'Kelly. It doesn't matter whose name is stamped on the plan. The thing about having a plan is if you follow it, odds are it's going to work. Right. So, you know, because you went down the path of, well, it's not for everybody. Well, it doesn't matter whose plan it is. Get a plan. And I think that's something that a lot of people are missing, right? And part of that plan, I'm going to throw one more question at you, Kinch, and that is, you know, have you, you know, you've got these additional expenses, right, with the new house. You're running into projects that, you know, as you dive into a project, often you uncover another project, right? Yeah. It's like pulling the thread out of the bottom of your shirt, and all of a sudden,
that's how fixer-uppers work.
Right. I'm doing the same thing. You and I are in the same boat. But the point that I'm making is make sure you're paying yourself first. Right? Make sure you're paying yourself first. And what I mean by that is make sure you're saving. Right? And if you're not saving, here's the challenge, right? So this is something that I do challenge a lot of folks with. That, you know, when we uncover that there's a need to save more, oftentimes I'll get pushback. Well, you know what? I'm at my limit. Right? I'm tapped out every month. Far too many people are tapped out. Right? They're living paycheck to paycheck, which is why they come and sit down. How can I make this retirement dream happen? Right. And usually part of that dream is, well, we have to save some more. And often the response is, well, I can't. So here's the challenge. If you're not paying yourself first, take a $20 bill. A real $20 bill, right? Put it on the kitchen counter and leave it there for 30 days. And if there is a bill in the house that doesn't get paid that month, then I believe you that you can't save.
Okay.
But if there is not one bill
that goes unpaid,
start with $20. Right? And you kind of said it yourself. Just start. You got to start the process, right?
Time value of money, man. We've been over this so many times. It's like if you're not doing something today, it doesn't matter how little. John did a video about like a penny doubled every day.
Yes.
Right? By the end of the month, it's over $1 million.
Millions of dollars. Yes.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. Now, nobody's going to double a penny every day. Or have the ability to earn that kind of money every day. But yeah, just the fact that just start. Doesn't matter like where you are on the journey. If you're younger, you have more opportunity to earn more over that time.
It's less about the dollar amount, Kinch, and it is so much more about the discipline. Saving for retirement, preparing for retirement is not about the bucket of money, right? Saving for retirement, the goal that we're after is income, right? It's about income. Income is the outcome that we're looking for in retirement. Getting to that point is not about the dollar amount that we're saving, not how big our bucket becomes over time. That's a part of it, right? Don't get me wrong. But it's about the discipline, right? So if that starts with $20 a month, great. Let's start with 20. And then after 3 months, let's revisit. Hey, how's it going? Let's up that to 30. Let's up it to 40. Et cetera, et cetera. It's about the discipline.
So for me, if I'm not very disciplined, the $20 bill, great example, right? What do you have any other like challenges or advice to like help with that discipline? You know, are you going to smack my wrist every time I go for the debit card or anything like that?
So no, no, I'm not going to do that. Right. I just can't. I can't do that.
Right.
But I will. My role is to provide the roadmap, right? Is to provide the path, right, to ultimately lead you to those retirement dreams, right? For you, it's building the Legos, the guns, some travel, grandkids, whatever those things may be in the future. I can tell you how to get there. You have to drive the car, though.
Right.
You got to do it, right? I'm a GPS, right?
I knew I'd heard your voice before somewhere.
I'm the one that is in the background when you call, when we sit down and visit and say, well, so we bought a boat, right? And that's when I'm in my head going, recalculating, right? So that's just it.
Yeah.
I am in the same boat as my clients, rowing in the same direction, right? We are on this journey together. right? My goal is to lead you to the promised land, but you still got to walk.
Right.
I'm not going to carry you. I'm not going to do it. Sorry, I'm just not. So
I wouldn't expect you to.
Right.
I wouldn't expect you to. And as many people as you've like helped along the way, like even you can point to their individual stories to be like, you know what, this person like here to like show some examples. Cause I think I learn a lot by examples, like either learning from people's mistakes or learning from people's successes. I think that's a big part of like, I realized how I learn. So I like hearing other people's stories and seeing how they got there, because then I can, put what they put in place for their life. Maybe I can tweak it for mine to try and help me like on that path.
I have one more question for you, Kinch. There's a lot more questions that I would be asking you.
I know these meetings last like 45 minutes, an hour.
Yeah, they do. And it's pretty amazing how quickly that time goes, right? And how much ground we cover. But one question that I'm actually really curious to hear your specific response to is, what do you look for? What would you be looking for out of a relationship with an advisor? Now, right. So I will preempt this with, I know that you've been around the business for a while. You've met a ton of advisors. So you've seen a lot of different personalities and ways of doing this business and doing this. But I'm really curious, what is it that Kinch would want from an advisor?
It is a really interesting question because I've been in and around the industry for a decade. I have met more advisors than I can shake a stick at. I've been to, probably close to, 200 advisors' offices, or, in the upper hundreds for sure. So it is interesting, and everybody's different, right? I think one of the things I like about the podcast is that I get to ask a lot of questions, because in a former life I was a journalist, right? So it's in my nature to be. I've always been very inquisitive and curious, and so being a journalist just helped me disguise my questions, right? And so I think I come from a place of like, I want to know you. I want to know why you do what you do. I want to know like what's important to you. If we have the same values, like, are we on the same playing field? Are we seeing things kind of the same way? I want a lot in common, like from that level. Mm-hmm. But then like we talked about in another podcast, like I'm not the type of person that asks for a lot of help, but I know that this is not something that I do every day, and that I need to hire an expert for this. So I want the best. So if the best connects with me on like a relationship type level, I think for me, being behind the camera, in front of the camera for so many years, I think story's important, right? So like, what is your story? Are you going to share that with me? Are you going to hear my story? Yeah. Because I'm a storyteller, and I want you to hear and like really hear like what's going on. Or are you the kind of advisor that's always thinking about, what's the best product, or how am I gonna upsell this guy into something else? Like, I think with my knowledge, I think I would be able to see through that like fairly quickly. And so I do want to connect and feel like I know you're smarter than me in this. But like, are you teaching me, or are you taking me for a ride? Like, there's a big difference, and I want to be kind of taught, not like talked over. But I also like want to connect on another level.
I'm probably going to butcher this quote, but something very recently that I heard really resonated with me and made a lot of sense, and that was, nobody cares about the product, right, until they know that you care about them. Right? It's not about the product, right? And I believe that, and it's one of the reasons that I love being a fiduciary and in an environment where I'm independent. Mm-hmm. But I came from a captive world in a prior life, right, mm-hmm. where I was limited, mm-hmm. right, to products. So a lot of my conversation, right, revolved around those specific products. Whereas I am now in a position where I can sit down and really, build products around the individual, mm-hmm. right? Not the other way around.
Right. That's really interesting. And I mean, to take that a little further, that's super important of being independent, right? And then like part of what brought me here to this place and to Rooted is because I had met Zach, and he was one of the hundreds of financial advisors I had met. But like in working with people, like you get to see who's very real and who's very fake, at least on like what I was doing in the industry before. It became very quickly apparent to me who could turn it on for the camera, like, and who was actually a genuine person day in, day out. They were the same kind of person that would talk to you the same way when the camera was on, when the camera was off. And so it became very apparent to me, like, the kind of character that Zach had. And out of the hundreds of financial advisors I met, there are only a handful that I would move my family across state lines for.
I was just going to say, Kinch,
right?
there's a reason that I moved.
You're in the same boat. Like, I want
400
to
miles almost.
Hitch my wagon to what he's doing. I believe in him and what he's built and the team he's put in place. Like, so by proxy, you too, like I believe in what he's building and how he wants to genuinely help people, and us growing just means we get to help more people. Like, that's the way I see it. And I'm like so proud to be a part of this team and this family, because this is an exclusive group and not everybody gets to be a part of it here. Like, when those stars align, like, it doesn't get any better than that. And I'm glad that you're here too, like by proxy, man. Like, that's so cool. Thanks for walking me through the process a little bit, high level.
I just wanted to give you a little taste, give the audience a little taste.
I didn't fill out the groundwork sheet.
No, you did not. I will slap Amber on the wrist for that one.
Okay.
She should have given you that ahead of time.
Well, cool, man. Thanks for walking me through that. I appreciate that. That'll do it for us today on this episode of Digging In. We'd like to thank our presenting sponsors, Rooted Wealth Advisors, for making today happen. If you have any questions about anything you heard on today's show, if you want to talk with Joe, put yourself in my shoes, walk through this process, feel free to give us a call. The number is 815-918-4727. I'll make sure you get a copy of the book that Joe wrote with Zach, Your Retirement Lifeblood. He might even autograph it for you if you ask nicely. Make sure you call that number, 815-918-4727. And that'll do it for us today. Until next time, keep digging in.
This was Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.